everybody. We're three guys in a ball, and today's ball, I brought one. Woo! This is part 3 of our active threats series, and we're going to do a little more case study, and we're going to talk about how we put ourselves in vulnerable situations. So ready? Let's start this thing off.
My dog just caught that thing.
My cat's looking at you back there like, what the heck was that? I don't know if you can see him. He's
My
like,
dog just killed your cat.
All right, 5 to 7 minutes, Paul, go.
So the first case study we want to talk about pretty much is the Boulder, Colorado one that happened on March 22nd, 2021. It really focuses on the ability to hide and survive a situation, and it directly falls into the statistics of not only FBI, but of the perception that and reality of it, that if you survive for at least 10 minutes, your chances of survival increases dramatically. Just to give you an example, it occurred on the 22nd, 2021 at a King Soopers supermarket in Boulder, Colorado. 10 people were killed, including 1 police officer. The police officer was actually the last person to be the victim of the active shooter. The alleged active shooter was a 21-year-old man named Ahmad Alisa. I can't pronounce it. Alisa. He was arrested supposedly after being shot in the leg after a shootout with police officers. The incident began around 2:30 p.m. The 21-year-old active shooter assailant fired at people in a parking lot. The first one to believe was to be a repairman. Killed 3 people in the parking lot, one of them being on the east entrance of the supermarket with a rifle and a 9mm handgun. Around 2:33, Boulder police began receiving calls about the incident, so it took almost 3 minutes from the shots being first fired and people being killed for somebody to actually call the police. Okay. 2:34, the description of the shooter was given to the police officers. Shortly after 2:34, around 2:35, 2 police officers arrived on scene, and the officer that was killed, Eric Tully, ran towards the gunfire, where he was shot and killed by the gunman. And that was around 2:35 p.m. So between the first shots being fired and the last victim being killed was a total of 5 minutes. The incidents around shortly after that, about 3 minutes afterwards, more police officers showed up, including, I believe, SWAT officers, and there was an ongoing shootout for almost 20 minutes between the gunman and the police officer, where the gunman was finally shot in the leg and then he was arrested. He was taken into custody at 3:28 p.m. after being shot in the leg. Right? Now, the whole incident lasted a little over an hour. Right, a little over an hour. But the interesting thing is that it only took 5 minutes for the gunman to kill 10 people. 5 minutes. Right. Everyone else survived. There was incidences of people shoveling people out the back door. There was some supermarket people that were shoving people out the back door. There were other instances of people hiding in little nooks and crannies, and there were also other people just not knowing what to do and running for their lives and just kind of running around with their chicken heads cut off. There were also people just standing there and froze, and some of those people that froze were killed. You have to do something, right? The second one I want to cover is on March 31st. This is the one that happened 8.4 miles from my house in Orange, California. It happened at 5:30 p.m. or around 5:30 p.m. The assailant was a 44-year-old man named Aminadab Gonzalez. Man, these guys have some hard-ass names to read. Anyways, he showed up at the apartment, or not the apartment, the business complex, and apparently knew all the victims that he killed, including the 9-year-old boy that was killed. The whole incident lasted not long. It lasted probably about 10-15 minutes tops. But the actual killing portion of it lasted only about between 5 to 8 minutes. Police officers arrived within 2 minutes of the incident occurring. Now, the good news that I understand from reading these articles, at least specifically this one, is somebody, as soon as they heard a gunshot, called 911. However, I also want to bring up that that another business nearby waited almost until the 10th shot was fired before he actually decided to do something. So he heard screaming, people running for their lives, and gunshots for almost about a good minute before he finally decided to do something. Right. So it's one of those things where, you know, again, you have the Optimize kind of creep in a little bit, but thank God he snapped out of it pretty quickly and got his people out of there.
Yeah.
How am I doing on time?
Dude, 4:43, bro.
Yes.
Kick Jake in the butt. Now what, Jake? What? You're the only one that can do case studies in QuickTime? You know,
He left out a lot of details.
I don't know. His voice is a little more soothing.
He's also from California, like you are. So these Virginia boys, man, it's an acquired taste.
But I will say the California boys, we look good. You see my rocket, bro?
Hollywood.
Radical.
That's like those Hollywood Marines we call them.
You know, 5 minutes was a common theme, Paul, right? Each lasted about 5 minutes for the actual killing. That's an eternity, a tactical eternity, right?
Mhm.
I mean, when you're in the halls in high school, you have 5 minutes to go through class, it goes fast. But when you're in a tactical environment, a stressful environment, that is a very, very long time because our thought processes and our physical processes speed up. So I just wanted to throw that out there for people that haven't experienced that.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And that's like the Parkland High School shooting I mentioned last week, where it was about 5 minutes total. And that is an eternity. Is an eternity when you are scared, if you're a bystander, scared for your life or death situation. And a couple of things that I want to add to that case study of the grocery store that Paul mentioned was on the outside, there were a couple bystanders that were telling other bystanders, run, 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 there's a shooter. And one thing that I'm big on covering in what I teach for my company, Lead Tactics. Lead Tactics is an acronym, and the A in the acronym is alert. And that line of sight alert is so important. And the alert part is one thing that is missing from the run, hide, fight model that DHS put out in 2013. It's a great basic model, but it kind of misses the alert part of the communication side. And whether it's, communication through a cell phone or a radio, or like I said, line of sight, face to face, that alert is so valuable. And another thing I read in the research I did on that case study was there was a part of it was recorded in the parking lot from a young man who lived in the apartments just across the street from the store. And so he said the first thing he heard was just this like pop, and he thought it was like a car accident. Yeah. And he's like, once I heard it again in quick fashion, I realized it's something else. So what does he do? He grabs his phone, and instead of thinking to call 911, he goes and I guess it's society kind of thing in our mindsets now. Let me get this thing on recording, So he could have been the first one to call 911 within seconds of it still being in the parking lot, but he chose to grab his phone and record it instead. So I just want to mention that.
You know what? We all know that I don't have the intellectual aptitude to do a full case study, but I will throw a little something that I've got out there. You guys remember that Sutherland Springs church shooting in Texas
Yes.
a bunch of years ago, 2017?
Yes.
So Stephen Williford was the NRA instructor that lived across the street from the church who actually stopped that. And I watched a video of him being interviewed, and a couple things. One, this guy's a shooting instructor, and it took him a couple minutes to convince himself it was gunshots at a church on a Sunday morning. Like, no firecrackers are going to be going off. And he talks about this. Like, I was in denial. I was like, this can't be it. Is this really the thing? And he was having the conversation with his daughter. And so that's just an interesting thing. Somebody who's around firearms, who is competent, who teaches other, still fell into this this trap that we talked about episode 1. And so don't dismiss that as something that happens to some people. It happens to lots of people when we're in normal life.
Yeah. There's one other thing I want to cover about one of the young men that worked at the coffee shop, the Starbucks inside of the store. He said, trying to find where I took some screenshots of it. He basically said, look, I was exposed. I was in the little kiosk right there by the Starbucks in the front door. And I kept thinking to myself, what will I do? He was thinking of options. And what I liked about that is he even said in here, I resorted back to my training while I was in school, K through 12. And like I told Paul earlier this week in a phone call we had, what organization out there in our country trains more for active shooter incidents than any other? Our schools do.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean they're all doing it the most effective, efficient way. So the challenge out there is, look, whatever you're doing, be open to a better game plan, be open to making better decisions, be open to other people's training recommendations.
Absolutely.
And the sad part about that is too, Jake, is that, as much as some of the teachers care about their kids, I was shocked to learn that a lot of districts are just checking a box when it comes to that kind of training. It's not just schools, it's businesses. They're just literally checking a box.
Well, the thing with schools though is they're required to do it by code. Like you talked about, some government, in California, certain government organizations are required.
Right.
And I look at it like fire code purposes. In education, you have to do a fire drill per month. That's overkill, because the last kid to die in a fire in the U.S. in a school has been a long time. There's still fires in schools, but what we put so many variables in place to mitigate the spread of fire. And we all know, and I know Tim knows this very well, like Benghazi, fire is usually not what kills you, it's a smoke inhalation.
Right.
But we put so many things in place to mitigate those fires. But the active threat thing, what we don't put in place is we want to add all these tools, all these physical, tangible things, like those little barricade or door lock things, those whatever crazy apps on your phone. But guess what? You got to train the person first.
So let's talk about situations that we opt into that make us more vulnerable than others. And let's talk about the mindset of when I show up to a place that is a public place that could have any type of emergency situation go on, whether it's a shooter, whether it's a domestic disturbance, like people start fighting, whether it's a car that runs off the road, right? Inadvertently or on purpose. What should we be doing when we show up in these different venues?
In all honesty, a lot of it, being alert is probably one of the biggest defenses you can have, because being alert in any kind of situation, and it's not, there's a difference between being alert and being hyper vigilant, right? Being alert just means being aware of your surroundings, just kind of making a game out of it, right? The alertness game, finding out, okay, where are the exits? How many bathrooms are there, right? Where are the emergency exits? For example, if you're in a restaurant, right, you always want to know that, if something were to happen, you can run towards the kitchen. Why? Because every kitchen has a dock and a door that nobody ever really usually thinks about. What is surprising that is that a lot of people, when they come in through the main entrance, even if a bad incident were to happen, they would go out that same instance they came in, probably knowing full well that everyone else and their mothers is probably go towards that same exit.
Yeah.
Right. And then a second amount of people will be going towards the emergency exit, but very few people actually understand that in a restaurant, they have a door that goes out in the kitchen.
Or a mall, right? Every one of those shops, if you go behind the counter in a mall and you go to the back of the actual store, not the part where you buy stuff, but where they have stock in offices, there's a hallway so that they can bring the merchandise in, which leads to exits, which aren't available to the public, So it's opening your mind. I'd like to bring up one thing. So let's say restaurants, cafes, etc., right? Smaller public spaces that you come into. So like, how many of us tactical guys are like, I always sit with my back to the wall, that way I can see the front door, I do it.
What if
But I just wanted to make that cool
I
voice
know,
and make
of
fun of
course.
some people. But you know what else we don't think about? You guys have all had CQB training. I think all of us have taught CQB training at one point. What's the most common mantra that we give? Ride the door, check your corners. So if you're going to sit in a restaurant in an open space that is open, if you sat towards the door in the corner, most likely when somebody comes in, they're going to see what's in front of them and engage that way. They're probably not actually going to check their corner at first. So that, if you're just understanding how people think in stressful situations when they come through a door, you take yourself off their line of sight, out of their immediate awareness. It gives you time to do something. Whether that something is, I'm going to break this window and jump out. I'm going to pick my chair up and spear them and push them to the ground. Even if you just jump, run up, and you bump into them and knock them down and then leave, that throws them off and you and your family can get out. We don't need to be wrestling people to the ground and fighting for the gun and all these types of things. Very small things will disrupt these types of attacks because, as we talked about, these people are under stress. They're not usually professionally trained. And they know as soon as they start, the timer is going and they're stressed to achieve their outcomes. What do you guys think of that?
Yeah, like real quick to add back to our case study that, can you guys hear me? Can you hear me? Okay. Take Paul's case study, the first one at the store. One of the things I read was the shooter was very patient outside in the parking lot where one of the people he shot was right outside the entrance and he shot him. The guy dropped. He walked right up to him, stood over him and just shot him like 3 more times. And then one thing the police mentioned inside there is that over the radio, the police were talking to each other and back and forth to emergency operations. They're like, this guy's laughing at us. And some of the bystanders in there and the victims had mentioned that too from inside, that he was laughing. And so it really takes to the point of like, it's easy to put the mindset out there of like, yeah, in general, gunfights are stressful. Shooting is stressful, especially when it's something that's dynamic and you're seeing, people die, people get hurt around you. But as the shooter, I mean, it's really his mindset is his own. It's organic, it's really his own to own. And no one knows what's going on with that guy. But what I was reading was like, he was really friggin' acting strange and like enjoying every moment of this.
The thing is that when it comes to active shooters, they fall into different kind of categories. But as far as the mindset goes, that there was not a chance in hell that guy was scared of dying, because if he was, he wouldn't be as calm as as people said, nor let alone laughing at law enforcement, right? I don't know the how long he was researching it, but my best guess is for at least I would say at least 6 months he was planning the sucker, for at least 6 months.
But would you guys say, with all the case studies that you studied, that is atypical? That is not the normal mindset?
To be calm in an active shooter event? In the case studies that I've seen, by and large, with the one in, even the one in Orange, I was watching some footages of the 44-year-old Mr. Gonzalez going in and starting shooting up the real estate building. He was surprisingly calm, and now, does that mean that his heart isn't pounding? No, that's not what I mean. What I'm saying is that if you're, when most people's anxiety shoot through the roof, right? Nobody wakes up in the morning and says, you know what, I'm going to die today and I'm going to be okay with it. Nobody really thinks that way. If somebody tells you you're going to die today, you're probably going to freak the crap out and your anxiety is going to shoot through the roof, right? It's, once you kind of come to terms that you're going to die and you're expecting to die, that fear gets taken out of you. Now, are you still going to be, is your heart going to be pounding? Yeah, but it's going to be through excitement, not so much of fear.
Yeah, I agree with that.
At least that's what I've seen.
I agree with that statement. And also adding the idea of planning. anytime, and I'm thinking about this in general, guys, with things you've done in your professional life. When you plan something and you kind of play it out in your head how you think it's going to go, and you do it for so long, you're so, let's say you're passionate about it, like some of these crazies are, and they really are planning these horrible incidents and events, and then once it happens, if it goes the way that they're planning, they might really be enjoying it. But this is a whole nother element to add to it. This is why it's so important as a bystander to add that counter to them, that perceived two-way gunfight type of counter. Even if you don't have a gun, it's getting something as a weapon of opportunity and a force multiplier for yourself to throw off their planned mindset that they had been predicting for so long and planning and planning and planning. And once you do that, we all know, it's like Mike Tyson says, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face.
What was that piece of paper, Paul?
So sorry. The reason I looked away earlier because my cat was scratching my massage chair, so I had to get him off. So I just and I threw it. Landed right on his behind, scared him enough, so he ran away, which is fine. But the reason why I brought this up is because
you countered him. Good job.
Exactly, right? But something as simple as this, taking a piece of paper and just chucking it at the guy, or a ball.
Always carry a ball.
Even something as simple
and your racket. That racket and that ball, dude, that could be some
sick,
dude, you
right?
could get a massive sponsor.
Oh yeah.
Dude,
Can you imagine if
like...
that caught on video? If that was caught on video, dude, you would be sponsored for life by like Penn.
Until they saw me actually play, but
Right.
Maybe Adidas.
What other things could our viewers think about as they go into public places that could experience a violent encounter? What could they pre-plan? What could they pre-resolve in themselves before they step into the situation that would give them a higher chance of a good outcome?
The first thing I would probably say is get their mindset.
If you're a defender. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, you go, please.
No. I mean, the first thing I would say is, and I kind of heard a little bit about what Jake was saying, and this is going to be a perfect lead into what he's going to say, what I believe he's going to say, is that you got to get your mindset right first, right? Once you get out of that mindset of I don't want to say the word sheep, but get out of that sheep mentality of just being completely vulnerable and oblivious to everything. That would be the first one. And then Jake.
Okay, no, Paul, please, if you got more, man, I'm sorry.
No, by all means, because what you were saying actually was I was just gonna do a quick introduction, but I don't want to use the term sheep because I don't want it to make it people seem like that's not what they're doing. It's just I forgot the author, but there was this one author, a very well-renowned security specialist, and his name escapes me right now, but he essentially broke down society into three types of people. You got the sheep dogs, and then you have the wolves. Right? So the sheep are pretty much.
Is that Dave Grossman? Dave Grossman?
Yeah, I think that might have been it. Yeah, his name escaped. That
he wrote the book On Combat and On Killing.
Right.
Yeah.
That is the one. You're right. And I liked what he said because people that are oblivious, that live the vulnerable lifestyle of just going, it's not happening, they're very, very vulnerable. Whereas the sheepdogs, they have the same characteristics as the wolves. They're just as big with large fangs, but their job is to protect the sheep. And then you have the wolves that are preying on the sheep. So it's a fine line, and I would like to assume and think of the fact that guys like us are the sheepdogs protecting everybody, and keeping the society safe.
By the way, quick note on Grossman. He has a children's book out for like 6 to 8 to 9 to 10 years old that explains the difference between bad people and good people that sometimes are scary, like military cops and things like that. Great book. And Leslie and I, whenever we have foster children that age, we order one of those books so they can take it with them, because often they are very afraid, and they're very afraid of what will happen after the situation blows up, and they're always afraid of police and things. And every time we leave a note when we order through his website, this is for a foster child, this is his name, he handwrites a inscription in there dedicating the book to them, which is sick.
Love it.
That's so cool. That's so, and you know what's cool about that too, Tim, is that is that he's literally spent his entire career traveling. Like I'm very like connected into his stuff, and a lot of the guys I work with have brought him in to train with him.
Yep.
And man, he literally spent his entire career doing that. And to hear that he's doing kids books, that's great. And
It's
maybe
awesome.
we'll add that to our show notes. We can add that to our show notes.
And
The link
Jocko's
to that
doing
book.
some really cool kids books too. I ordered some, but
Yeah.
they're more about like kids empowerment and like how to use discipline and everything to like
Right.
overcome problems at school and things. But that's another subject.
Yeah.
Hey, real quick.
Hey, hold on. Hey, I want to cover this part that we were going to cover about to give out there to our listeners and people.
Yeah, I was going back to that because y'all guys were getting off topic.
Okay, so here's what I really want to make important. Colorado, the state of Colorado, there had to be some concealed carry individuals within that store. I'm just saying, predictability wise, there had to be, or statistic wise, there had to be. And so, if you are, this is so important. This is what I teach when I do concealed carry training here in Virginia. It is so important to remember that the information under stress that is being reported to the good guys with guns, the law enforcement, sworn officers coming in, okay? Because those officers that responded to that store, 3 of them showed up at the same time and they rolled in together. And one of them was Tally, and he was shot like 30 feet from the main door. And they didn't get the guy to surrender for like another 50 minutes. It took a long time. It was like 54 minutes total.
Shootout.
But anyway, what I want to say is if you are carrying and you're a bystander and there is a active, all that law enforcement has been reported is that someone's got a gun. There's a guy with a gun. So if you present your weapon as a bystander and police respond, or even another citizen, another bystander is on site, remember how stressful, how scary, and how urgent the situation is. Do not be mixed up as the bad person with a gun.
Nope.
That is so, I'm telling you, this is so important. Do not be mixed up as the guy with the gun. So if unless you need it, you might want to carry it like a sole position where you have it a little bit lower, but sole carry is basically, sole means south in Portuguese.
Yep.
So carry it low and south. Or you know what? Maybe wherever your holster is, put it away. And I know that might sound crazy, but I'm telling you, I would rather have a little bit more line of sight control over my environment with getting concealment, getting cover, and having my gun stowed away somewhere in that situation than being mixed up as the person that is the bad guy. So
Yeah.
I just want,
Well,
I wrote some notes on that.
Here's the thing too. If you're concealed carrying, a lot of guys will say, if you're concealed carrying, you better stop the shooter. Guess what? Life hits us. Stress hits us. I'm not going to tell you what you should be doing in any situation. However, once the cops do show up, unless you're actively under threat, that thing better be put away, out of sight. And if you have time and you're not engaged for whatever reason, and you call the police, let them know, like, I'm an armed civilian CCB. This is what I'm wearing. This is where in the store I am, and I am not presenting a threat. That way they know that there is somebody in there and kind of what you look like.
Even then, I probably wouldn't. But even if that was the case, I would still, if the cops showed up,
No, put the gun away.
either put it away or throw it directly, like as far the hell away from you as possible.
Yeah.
Raise your hands and say, "Look, there's still an active shooter here. That's my gun. Please don't shoot me." Right? Because the only thing that the cops care about is what Jake said. All they know is that there's a guy in there with a gun, and you don't want to be mistaken for the guy with the gun. They're not in there to save civilians. They're not in there to save hostages. They're in there to kill the guy with the gun. That is the only thing they care about. And the worst thing you can do is be mistaken for the guy with the gun.
Absolutely.
Right. And remember, these are all humans under a lot of stress on the police side and on the civilian side. So that's what matters.
Well, and they're walking into a dangerous situation cold. They have a lot of information to process.
Right. And they don't know a lot.
Nope.
And they don't know a lot. And so like Westgate Mall attack in Nairobi, Kenya, that would be a good one if you were armed, because that lasted 72 hours. So let's say you're day 2, you're still in there. At some point, yeah, maybe announcing out, hey, I'm stuck in here. If you can communicate somehow, I'm a good guy. I'm wearing a red shirt, blah, you know, I mean, whatever it is, basic stuff, but maybe let your status be known in a way you can be recognized. But again, at that same time, that doesn't mean you present your weapon on good guys.
No, never do that. This
Flashlight.
small little $45 Phoenix PD22 fits in any front jeans pocket. It is bright as hell. And that will distract somebody. So like think about just having something like this. If you were in that environment and that person was in your vicinity, that may distract them enough. This is super bright for you to be able to move and get out of the way a little bit. Another thing is movie theaters, right? So that's been a problem in the past, not a huge problem, but a little bit of a problem. You really shouldn't go into a movie theater without a flashlight like this. That in itself, like the Aurora, Colorado thing, that guy comes into a dark theater and you hit him with this beam of light, he's not going to be aiming. That's for sure. He will probably actually retreat because he'll feel danger. So something else to think about. This is cheap. The batteries last forever, and you can always keep it on you.
It's the perfect smokescreen, right? It has the same
Diversion.
characteristics and tactical advantages as a smoke grenade, right?
Yep.
Except this is instantaneous. You don't have to wait for the smoke to kind of build up a little bit. It's just boop, he's blind, run.
Yeah, I mean, you got a good 3 to 5 seconds where that individual is not seeing a whole lot of anything but glare.
Well, I mean, even me just hitting the
Black dots.
camera and it bouncing off of the white wall, like I saw spots for a few seconds.
Mhm.
But it's a diversion. It's not
Yeah,
a shield.
yeah.
But
Yeah.
you get that element of surprise back on your side for about 3 seconds.
Right,
And a
also
lot
takes-
can happen in
Yeah.
3 seconds if you're hauling.
Yep, and it also takes
Yeah,
away the.
so there's that term we use in martial arts. Go ahead.
Oh no,
Go ahead, Paulie. All right, so there's a term real quick in Krav Maga that we use, RCAT, and you don't have to use all 4 of them, but redirect. So if someone has a gun, you don't redirect, control, attack, and maybe even take away. And I think I mentioned that before, but the flashlight part is a good time when that could be, if that's within an arm's distance or you have that close vicinity, perfect time. The light discipline part or the flashlight part, redirect that weapon, get it offline. Don't take the weapon, deal with the threat. But if you get the weapon, hey, continue that beating.
Yeah, primary mission, if you find yourself in this situation, is get yourself and the people with you safe, right?
And it's also important too, is that
Yes, sir.
if you're out there, and this is for our audience and our security personnel, if you do have the security training and you're out there, remember that even though this training has been out there for a while, nobody really knows about it, which is, it's shocking, but not a lot of people know that this kind of training actually exists. But the thing is that if you're security personnel out there and you have been trained and you know what to do in a certain situation, take charge, right? Because I've seen in countless videos where, you know, people don't know what to do and they follow the first person that acts even remotely like they know what they're doing. Sometimes for better, for example, like in the Boulder, Colorado shooting, where people just kind of started shoving people out and they just kind of said, okay, fine, whatever. But other times not so well, where people start dying in piles because they all thought it was good to just jump on top of each other.
Well, like that teacher in the computer lab that put all the students back in that room and barricaded the door. Good leadership there. Saved a bunch of kids.
Absolutely. And
Imagine.
Paul, one thing to add to your case study again in Colorado, one of the workers and I think it was in one of the deli, I believe.
Yes.
She was saying that I'm looking at my screenshots here. She hid in a little storage area and she was a smaller body person and her coworker wasn't small. And he tried to also follow her lead in hiding instead of looking for other options. And I bring this up where she literally said, I don't know how I survived. If you would have come in here, I would have been dead. And that to me, that is look, I am not judging anyone that's alive or dead. I want to help them learn how to stay alive longer. And that is by making decisions under low stress and training that prepare you for high stress in real life, which is look for options. Don't find that one absolute and then cross off everything else. She literally crossed off any other option by saying, this was it. I'm so lucky. And
But
her
she made a
coworker followed
decision.
that.
At
She
least she
did.
decided
But
and
what I'm
executed a
saying
plan.
is, right. What I'm saying is afterwards, though, she reported, if he would have come back here, I would have been dead because I was just hiding here. So looking for weapons of opportunity and finding better, what more efficient weapons of opportunity as you maybe move along on your egress to try to get out of there, as in a knife, okay, a sword,
Sword,
a glass bottle, yeah,
a
a glass
freaking
bottle,
mop,
whatever it
and
is.
use it as a bow staff. Because that's
One of the best
insane.
weapons that I believe, like,
How about a T-bone steak?
Ooh, a frozen one, bro. That's no joke. They call it
I didn't,
tomahawk for a reason.
I
Get
didn't have
that
dinner
cut?
yet. You're making me hungry.
Hey guys, last thoughts before we wrap this one up?
Nothing really, just pretty much, I would say, just kind of reinforce what everyone's been talking about, Jake, and you, Tim, is that, you have to do something, right? The situation dictates, but every active shooter incident, like we said last time, is very different. But the very first thing you have to do, again, is just to reiterate this fact, is you have to get out of that mindset that it can't happen to you, right? Just be alert. Now, we're not saying being paranoid. We're just saying be aware of your surroundings. That's all we're saying. If you can do that, and if you could just get rid of the mindset like, oh, look, I live in fairyland and like nothing bad is ever going to happen to me. If you at least start there, then you're well on your way to be safe in any type of situation, including active shooters. Would you guys all agree?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes. I think the last thing I want to say to this topic, and we can cover this, we can come back to this in the future, but one of the most important things is remember the outcome that you are desiring in life and in these type of situations. We pay a lot of money for insurance, for like our phones, for our house, for rent, for our car, whatever it is. We pay a lot of insurance out there. But I look at this policy of training as life insurance to keep your life. It's an investment for the physical life we live in and the places that we go and how we can operate and be more prepared for the things outside of our control. Because there's a lot of things out there that we don't have control over. And if we get so sucked into worrying about them and letting them take over and be able to make a decision, it can really, really put us in a bad place. And we just need to accept that what I do control, I must master it at my best ability and just have this confidence about yourself where wherever you go, you know what? Hey, I'm ready to face it and I'm ready to be creative.
There's no perfect outcomes should you find yourself in this situation, right? It is survival. So make a plan before you put yourself in a vulnerable situation. I would say when you walk into a place that you have a decision on where you put yourself down at a table or at a booth or whatever, see what you see when you walk in and then take account of what you didn't see immediately. Get out of that first visual line of sight. That puts you in a more defensible position. They won't notice you right away. And you know what? Carry a ball and a flashlight. It's three guys.